Shalom. This week we are reading Parshat KiTavo. Parshat KiTavo, such a beautiful Torah portion, contains the blessings and the admonitions, the blessings for keeping the Torah, for following the mitzvot, and the warnings, the admonitions of what happens when we separate from the Torah, when it starts to fall away from us, when it's no longer a part of us. And the parsha begins with the incredible experience of bringing the first fruits, which is just a total comprehensive experience of attachment to Hashem. It is like one of the most profound parts of the Holy Temple service, and it seems to us to be an experience of such tremendous ecstasy, clinging to Hashem, longing, joy, closing the circle. When a person who worked so hard to succeed in bringing forth the fruit of the land comes to the moment of fruition, when the first fruits, 7 species for which the land of Israel is praised, are ripened. And that moment, which can be so self-centered, which can become a moment of total arrogance, really. Instead, the person tempers the excitement of bringing forth this fruit and marks it, especially, makes a declaration, this is the first fruit, brings it to the Holy Temple, closes the circle of where I am in Hashem's world, realizing it wasn't me that did this with all my toil, with all my labor, with all my sweat and prayers. I still can't explain how this miracle could happen. Brings the first fruits to the Holy Temple. This is a positive commandment. And it's accompanied by another commandment, which is this declaration and confession before Hashem's presence, when the first fruits are handed to the administering Kohen in the Holy Temple. And we have this declaration, which is kind of like a very concise, very compact synopsis of the history of the people of Israel. And again, how I am here now, how I don't deserve any of this. The bottom line, the whole experience of bringing the first fruits is one of tremendous acknowledgement, recognizing Hashem's hand in my life, the individual says, in the life of the nation, in the life of all humanity. It's a very profound experience wherein a person realizes it's really not about me at all. It's all about Hashem's hand in the world and Hashem being the source of all blessing. Something really missing from our lives today, that kind of a visceral, powerful, almost traumatic in a good way, kind of just being called on the carpet and realizing the dynamics of the relationship. I think it's amazing to note that for all practical purposes, the mitzvah of Havat HaBikurim, the bringing of the first fruits, is really the conclusion of the mitzvot in the Torah. The rest of the parshiot in the book of Devarim are more esoteric. They have a lot of moral imperative. They contain Moshe's final admonition to his people, his words of parting. They contain the blessings that he gave over to the people, prophetic visions. There is the commandment of Hakel, of assembling the entire nation every 7 years. Essentially, as far as the book of the Torah as being the book of mitzvot, the last commandment affecting the nation in the manner of the commandments that's given over is this one. The commandment of the bringing of the first fruits. It's in a way a type of sealing of one characteristic, of one of the aspects of Torah, the bringing of the first fruits. It's very apropos because in a way it could be said that the bringing of the first fruits is like a a capsulization that contains all of the mitzvot, because the character traits, the midot, the attributes, feelings, the presence of mind and the degree of the intention of the heart and soul, that all need to be mustered up in order to bring the first fruits, really, that's what we need to fulfill all the commandments. And because the basis of everything when it comes to the process of bringing the first fruits is this clear acknowledgement of the I and thou relationship, that's really so essential for any hope of developing a relationship with Hashem. I want to say something else, though. It's a little unusual. Is there a connection between the beginning of this Torah portion and the conclusion of last week's Torah portion? Last week's Torah portion ended with the commandment to remember Amalek. And this week's Torah portion begins with a vav, the connector, and it will be when you enter the land that Hashem your God gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take of the fruit, the first of every fruit of the ground that you bring in from your land that Hashem your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place that Hashem your God will choose to make his name rest there. But last week we ended the Torah portion with a very stark, grim, sobering, heavy-duty reminder of the vulnerability, inconsistency, and unfinished business that is the human condition and Israel's responsibility. Because Hashem tells us, remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt, that he happened upon you on the way, and he struck those of you who were hindmost, all of the weaklings at your rear, when you were faint and exhausted, and he did not fear God. It shall be that when Hashem your God gives you rest from all your enemies all around, in the land that Hashem your God gives you as an inheritance to possess it, you shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heaven. You shall not forget. First of all, that is just so extremely different than the mood with which Parshat KiTavo begins, which is a expression, perhaps one of the most profoundly, simply, clearly, direct expressions of joy in the whole Torah, the experience of bringing the first fruits. And that is just, again, based on the most profound revelation of Hashem's presence in the world. This could only come about by the hand of God, this beautiful process of the earth bringing forth life, and of my recognizing the minuscule role that I played in that by tending to these things and by bringing the first fruits before Hashem's presence and declaring, acknowledging, recognizing his hand in everything. Amalek, the end of last week's parsha, is first of all about concealing Hashem's presence in the world, all about not acknowledging Hashem, all about the arrogance of usury, of dominance, of superiority, of an attempt to blot out everything holy. It's all me. Amalek is about just a humanoid cloned takeover that hides the presence of Hashem in the world. And it's so bad, and it's so evil, and it's so destructive, and it so much endangers all life on earth, that we find ourselves saddled with a commandment that some today in our, I'm okay, you're okay, liberal world where it's not politically correct to be critical of anybody or anything, some in our world today would find this commandment to be so inexplicable and embarrassing that they would deny that it could possibly be from the Torah, because there it is. We have a positive commandment in the Torah to wipe out every man, woman, child, possession, a remnant, reminder, thread of evidence that Amalek ever existed. And it's an eternal commandment. So what was it about Amalek that's so bad? And the more we study, the more we understand that this nation, this people, this spirit, this characteristic is based on the exact opposite of everything which is connected with bringing the first fruits. Bringing the first fruits is an exercise in total humility and nullification of the self, the joy of being in Hashem's world for its own sake, for His sake, for the sake that He created a world for man to find Him in and to take joy in what He's given them. Amalek is about, this is not Hashem's world at all. There is no such thing as Hashem. There's only me, what you can do for me, how I can use you, how I can suck the marrow out of someone else's life. Everything is in servitude to Amalek, who comes to depose God from the world. So the commandment that Israel was given to remember what Amalek did and to remember to destroy Amalek, it's not a personal thing. It's not just some other aspect of Israel's responsibilities. It's really one of the linchpins of Israel's nationhood. And so Hashem says in the end of last week's Torah portion, it shall be when Hashem your God gives you rest from all your enemies all around, in the land that Hashem your God gives you as an inheritance to possess it. What's an inheritance? Even this concept is the opposite of Amalek. Inheritance is something that I received from my fathers. What did I do to deserve it? But Hashem bequeathed it to my forefathers. I received it from them, and I in turn will give it over to my children. It's not about the Amalekite version of usurping, of taking, of superimposing ourselves over something. So when He gives us this land as an inheritance, we have to wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heaven. And why is that? Even the memory? Because the worst thing that can happen to anyone is to forget what Amalek is, and thus potentially, God forbid, fall into the same trap of becoming like them. And the call to Israel in her land is to radiate from there this pristine, beautiful message of nationhood and humanity to the whole world. And how is that expressed? What is the lesson that we give over to humanity? What is the diametric opposition to Amalek? When you enter the land that Hashem, your God, gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, you shall take of the first fruit of the fruit of the ground, and bring it to Hashem, and put it in the basket, and make your declaration. What is the opposite of Amalek? It is the recognition of Hashem's hand in everything. No wonder. This commandment is practically the end, for all practical purposes, the end of the commandments part of the Torah. Because this is everything. This is the basis of our relationship with Hashem, the ability to realize that we have nothing in this world without Him, that everything comes from Him, that everything that we have, we didn't build it. We are bringing it back to Hashem. We are bringing it to Him and recognizing His hand in everything. And as long as we have that goal of bringing everything, as it were, the first fruits of everything, to Hashem, and standing in His presence and acknowledging His role in our lives, and we temper that with a twin, as it were, almost, believe it or not, the counterpart of bringing the first fruits, the crescendo of last week's Torah portion, the commandment to remember to destroy Amalek. That is the recipe. That is the recipe for not only for our survival as a people in this land, the land of our inheritance that Hashem our God gives us. It's a recipe for this people to flourish, to succeed in, first and foremost, the most important mission that we have as a people, to broadcast to the world, to teach the world acknowledgement, recognition of Hashem in everything. And like the experience of bringing the first fruits, the recognition of Hashem's hand in our lives is the basis of all true joy.